every big move I've made in life that I look back on and go, that was a good move, was immediately preceded by a feeling of equal fear and excitement.
Welcome to The Growth Concept. I'm your host, Keone Upton, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Declan Edwards. Declan is a happiness researcher and an expert who runs his own college, BU Happiness. We'll be going deep into the modern culture and how happiness doesn't seem to be perceived as that important success is. We'll be unpacking how to live a more fulfilling life on your own terms. This episode is a great reflection on the process and the system involved to live a more fulfilling life.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Declan, explain to me, what is it exactly you do and why do you do it?
Man, it is a damn good question because let's be real. Sometimes I joke with people that if I had chosen a different career in life, say I was a carpenter, right? And people are like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a carpenter. And people go, I know what that is. I know what problem that solves. I know when I'll need that. Instead, I get to say, I'm a happiness researcher who runs a happiness college. And most people are like, what in the world is that? Does that even exist as a job? Did you just make it up? And I felt like that for a lot of my early career. So basically what I do, a way I describe it, so I run a social enterprise called BU Happiness College. And the best way to think of it is like the Harvard of happiness. So most of our education system is built around teaching people skills to make them become good employees. I wanted to create a space where people could learn the skills to be better human beings. Learn skills like emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, communication, leadership, decision-making skills, proactivity, intentionality, like habit building, behavior change. The skills that we know from the research lead not only to happier lives, but more successful and fulfilling lives. So we created a happiness college for that. The other way I describe it to people sometimes, it's like having a personal trainer, but for your brain, for your mind and emotions, rather than for your body. And I've run that for 8 years and dedicated my career for the last 10 years to studying happiness through a scientific lens.
Congratulations, man. That's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I want to know, you've mentioned in your TED Talk that your message of happiness is a skill. Being happy is a skill. And this is really interesting, but before we go into this avenue, I want to know the person behind this purpose. What do I need to know about your earlier years to have your perspective on happiness and leadership that you have now?
Look, I think the most common misconception people have about me when they meet me or come across my work these days is, oh, this guy seems pretty chipper and happy. Of course he's a happiness researcher. He must have been a pretty happy kid growing up. And on one arm, that's true. That on the other hand, it's remarkably not. I will say I spent most of my teenage years being really good at playing the role of happiness, but not actually being happy. And what I mean by that, I was really good at being what I call a human chameleon. I could be what I thought everyone else wanted me to be, right? If someone wanted me to be, funny, I could be funny. If I was really good at putting on this front of, if I can say it bluntly, I've got my shit together and, I'm happy and fulfilled and, I'm doing well. But deep inside, as much as I was like ticking the milestones of what I was told would lead to a happy life, like I was doing relatively well at school, I graduated, I got into university, I had a girlfriend, I was, working, I was saving money, I did a bit of travel. I was ticking the boxes of life and then going, something seems to be missing. Like I don't feel any happier inside of me. And it wasn't until I'd met some really good mentors, and one in particular who became a really good friend of mine over the years, that I started to reflect and go, oh, it's very hard for me to be deeply fulfilled and happy in life when I have no bloody clue what a happy and successful life is by my definition and terms. I'm so busy chasing other people's expectations of me or chasing society's rule book for what a happy, successful life is that I've never stopped to ask, what do I want? What are my values? What do I care about? What are my strengths? Who am I? Like, you know what I mean? To go, what matters to me? And when I started learning about that, I just fell in love with the field of research dedicated. It's called positive psychology. So it's dedicated to understanding happiness, fulfillment, what makes life worth living, how do we fulfill our potential as individuals, but doing it from a really practical, scientific, evidence-based lens. And fortunately, I was able to do a postgraduate degree in that and dedicate my life to it. And to this day, I like to say, as much as I run a happiness college and I'm a happiness coach and I teach people the skills and science of happiness, a decade and a bit later, I'm still always practicing that myself, right? I'm a human being first and a happiness researcher second. There are still days when I struggle with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, stress, and it is a continual practice to use these skills and tools that I've gained over the last decade to make sure that I'm able to show up as the best version of myself.
I think that's a very important point you've raised in that explanation of your life so far. And I can really relate to the sense of, you finish school, you go to uni, and then it's like, well, now what? And a lot of young individuals can relate with that. I want to dig a bit deeper in that point. You were saying that you felt very lost and somewhat unfulfilled because you were living up to society's expectations and being told who you are, but not really asking those deep questions on who you really are. I want to know, what was your process throughout this journey? I want to specifically look into and zone into the process of you graduating school and being asked the question, well, what do you want to do in life? What job do you want to work for the rest of your life? What did that process look like for you?
Man, a lot of it involved allowing things to kind of reveal themselves as I went on the journey and made change. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of the time we can paralyze ourselves in change because we're trying to figure out all the answers in advance. And sometimes I use the analogy of like, that would be like trying to climb a mountain thinking that you can see every step from here to the summit. You can't. There's curves in the road, there's bends, there's hills that you've got to go over, there's checkpoints that you'll reach where you have a rest for a while for anyone who has climbed a mountain before. So the goal is not, I'm trying to get to the summit. The goal is, where am I trying to move in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months? Where am I trying to move day by day, week by week, right? What is the next step in the journey? And then trusting that things will reveal themselves along the way. So what that meant for me was, I could sort of tune in pretty early on whilst I was at uni. I went to university originally for journalism, by the way. So my first year was studying journalism. And I remember having this inclination inside of me being like, this isn't what I'm meant to be doing. Like, this is the starting point, but this is not what I'm meant to be here for. But I didn't know what I was meant to be there for. So I think the more we allow ourselves to lean into curiosity rather than perfectionism, like rather than trying to plan everything out and just go, let's get curious about life. Let's get curious about what feels right. And let's practice, this is the second major thing that helped a lot in those early years and still helps now, practicing introspection, which is looking inside of ourselves for the answers. I think particularly in this day and age, it's hard for people to practice quality time with their thoughts and feelings, quality time tuning into their intuition and gut instinct, because we're all growing up and we're being raised in a time where our attention is a huge economy. Like the most financially successful companies in the world right now, Google, Amazon, Meta, right? A lot of the way they make their money is by keeping our attention on their platforms. So telling us to look outwards, to go, hey, the answer to all your challenges, all the things that you want solved is out here somewhere. You just need to look for it. And I don't think it is, right? Like the best coaches and mentors I've had throughout my 20s and now into my 30s, the best work I've ever done when we coach people at the college is helping people realize that we all have this, whether you call it like a gut instinct, an intuition, an internal compass, the soul, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, there is something inside of us that tries to act as a little compass to guide us the right way in life. But we need to learn how to slow down and shut up to hear it, right? You will not tune into that while you're so busy and overwhelmed and racing to the next thing. There's a beautiful saying in personal development that the mind yells where the intuition whispers. Right. And we're normally so busy only hearing the mind chatter of expectations, judgment, fear, guilt, worry, anxiety, overwhelm, that we don't tune in enough to go, what's my gut instinct say about this? So early on, man, like my 19 through to 23, so much of my personal growth and personal development with my coaches and mentors was learning how to quiet my mind and emotions down a little bit and manage them more effectively so that I could introspect and tune in and tap into that gut instinct and intuition. And I sometimes joke now that the way I know I'm making a decision from intuition is I call it green light theory, which is if I feel an equal blend of fear and excitement right before I make the move, it's the right move. And I've used that to, proposed to my girlfriend who became my fiance, now my wife, soon to be the mother of my first child. I used that when we've traveled overseas, when I took a 6-month sabbatical last year and went to South America, like all the big moves, starting my business, growing my business, every big move I've made in life that I look back on and go, that was a good move, was immediately preceded by a feeling of equal fear and excitement. So I'd encourage the listeners, people tuning into this conversation, say, if you are looking at like, what do I do next in life? Write down all your options and go, which option equally scares and excites me? That's your green light. Follow it.
Okay, wow. I want to talk about that point. I'm 19 and I've so many things going on in my life. I'm feeling very hurried, and especially in Perth. I'm assuming you've been to Perth before?
Half my family's there, my man. My dad's
awesome,
side of the family is all there, yes.
It's probably the same, and you're located in Sydney, correct?
Just north, Newcastle, Hunter Valley area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. And in Perth, there's this hustle culture, and it's perceived as, if you're slowing down, you're having rest, you're falling behind. And even now, I feel my day's up. I want you to go back to your 19-year-old self, and what does that practice look like on your curiosity side and asking yourself these tough questions side? Like, how would you tell your 19-year-old self on what you know now, pretty much?
Man, I use the analogy sometimes. And by the way, love that we're having this conversation, dude. Like, I signed on to working with my first coach, my first mentor, when I was 19 years old. And I remember at the time being like, this is crazy, dude. Like, everyone else my age is buying cars at that point. They're moving out of home. And I'm like, I'm just taking whatever little bit of money I've saved up working at this bar to, like, I don't know, pay this guy he was about 10 years older than me to be like, I just want to learn from you, man. Like, I want to learn what you've learned along the way because you're a decade ahead of me. Like, and you seem to be living a life that's really fulfilling and aligned and successful and happy. And I want to learn from that. And tell you what, it was, speaking of equally scary and exciting moves, doing that was equally scary and exciting, but I'm so glad I did. One of the first, if I could go back now and say to my 19-year-old self, hey, lean in hard to this, don't resist it. It would be the practices involved with slowing down. And specifically, those are meditation and mindfulness and journaling. And the reason I use those two, again, we said it's hard to tune into our intuition and hear it because life's busy, we're hurried, everything seems to be moving fast. Yeah. Especially at that age group, right? Especially late teens, early 20s, where you're like, I got to get shit sorted. So meditation and mindfulness, anything that allows you to be present and aware of your surroundings. Now, I don't care if it's a mindful walk, if you're just mindfully eating without your phone in your damn hand while you have food, right? Like, whether you're just being present, be where you are, right? There's a beautiful, we did a Buddhist meditation retreat a couple of years ago with a bunch of our members from around Australia at BU Happiness College. And the monk asked us, what is the most important thing for us to do in life? I mean, that's a big bloody question. And so we meditated on it for a while, and we pondered, and we shared our answers that we thought were right. And he said, the most important thing to do is whatever it is you're doing at that time. Right? Whatever it is you're doing at that time, treat it like it's the most. So right now, this conversation you and I are having, this is the most important thing to me in my life right now. I'm present. I'm with it, right? There's full energy and intention and connection there. And I think we're losing that art because we're all multitasking. You know, we're watching something on Netflix while we're scrolling on socials, while we're trying to reply to an email, while we're chatting to our partner at home, right? Like, being present with something, that is meditation and mindfulness at its best. So practice that. Whether you want to use a guided meditation app, you want to do a mindful walk, I don't care, but practice being present and focused. The second one, journaling, is just the act of getting our inner world into our outer world so we can see it better. Our thoughts and feelings are really hard to manage well if we're playing at a home court disadvantage. Right? We don't want to wrestle them inside our head and heart because that's where they live. That's their home ground. That's their home turf, right? We don't do well there. Even me, having studied this for 10 years, I do not wrestle my thoughts and feelings well when they're inside of myself. So we need to get them out. Now, we can get them out in so many different ways. Conversation is a great one with coaching or therapy or counseling. But even just on your own, man, just write about what's on your mind and what you're feeling lately. Not only will you expand your emotional vocabulary and your ability to recognize and name emotions, you will see your thoughts and feelings through a clearer lens and you'll learn how to work with them. So if I could just go, hey, 19-year-old Declan or anyone listening to this who's like late teens, early 20s, if I want you to do 2 practices and 2 practices only, that I promise you will lead to a happier, more fulfilling life, meditation and mindfulness, journaling. Start with those.
Right, okay. I want to touch on your meditation journaling briefly. I've been doing this for probably 2 years now, and
Cool.
I see a particular pattern, especially in my journaling as such. And I think this is a good way to measure on where you are in your life, which for a young individual is so important, I feel. Do you see in your journaling that there's frequent things that come up? Like, for example, it's been like 3 days in a row I've been thankful for like my family and the community around me. Do you find in your journaling you need to be a lot more specific?
Yeah, so you can be. So there's a few types of journaling here, right? So, and you've actually mentioned a couple there that we can touch on. So there's passive journaling, which is when I'm just going to write what's on my mind and on my heart without direction. So it's a blank page, just get it all out. You're not trying to do anything with it. It's just a nice space to kind of, sometimes I just call it like a mental deload. Like you're just venting it to somewhere else and you can come back to it if you need to. It's just a nice way to clear the clutter in our brain. The second one is active journaling, and that's when you'll come at it with intention. So you might have a journaling prompt or something that you're trying to work out and solve. And so that's got a lot more specificity to it, right? Like it's very clear and intentional. And our third one, which is one of the most evidence-based tools for something that we can practice that builds happiness, is gratitude journaling, which it sounds like you've been playing with, right? So like, what am I grateful for and why? What do I appreciate in life and why? I did find for me, man, like gratitude journaling, I resisted it for a lot of my early 20s because it felt a bit fluffy. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Like, look at what we're grateful for. And at some point I had to go, either I'm being stubborn here or, right, either I'm being stubborn or maybe I'm wrong and these thousands of people who've dedicated their life to studying happiness and all concluded that gratitude is good for us, maybe they're onto something. Like maybe I need to practice this. I found that doing gratitude journaling with a blank canvas was really hard because I would have days where I'd be like, what am I grateful for? And my brain would be like, nothing. Today was shit. Right? I don't feel like I'm where I want to be in life, especially, at that early, like starting sort of being an adult. I had this idea of what I wanted my 20s to look like, and life doesn't normally play to our plans. Right? And so what I found really helped, which perhaps the listeners might want to pinch, you're more than welcome to if you'd like this. I've found for gratitude journaling, 3 prompts really helps me. So it turns it from a passive gratitude journal to an active gratitude journal. And the 3 prompts are, what is a small moment that occurred today that I would normally take for granted, but that I could instead be grateful for? So I'm training my brain to look for the little wins, to look for the little moments that don't feel like these big milestones, but they add up over time. And the second one is, who is someone I'm grateful for today and why? And that could be someone that I'm super close with, like a loved one, like my wife, or it could be just someone that I had a really nice conversation with, right? So a nice human moment. And the third one, which is the hardest, at least for me and for a lot of people I talk to, which is why I leave it to last. I kind of warm up the gratitude part of my brain first. Yeah. The third is, what is something about myself I'm grateful for today and why? And that could be like a personality trait or a decision that I've made or something physical about myself. And I found it over time, it strengthened my relationship with myself. And so those little 3 prompts, what's a small moment, who is someone else I'm grateful for, and what is something about me, I found that made gratitude journaling a little bit more effective for me personally.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point, and I'm definitely going to apply that after this. Thank you. In your TED Talk I was viewing, and you mentioned a very important point which I want to discuss. Chasing other people's happiness.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love this because I think in a world where media is everywhere, you're seeing this guy with a Lamborghini out in Florida, buy my course, my life is so amazing. And deep down you're like, damn, that's really cool. And then you're drawn into that direction, then you're drawn into another direction, but you don't know your own direction. And this is something I've observed in my life. And when you mention this point, I'm like, I really can relate with that. I want to know, what part of your life came up with this or registered in your brain that you're chasing other people's happiness? Can we talk about that experience you've had?
Yeah, I think for me, to be honest, man, I just got really tired. Like I found myself achieving a lot, right? Like I mentioned before, ticking the boxes of life, but feeling so disconnected from myself and so fatigued. And I'm so grateful, to be honest, that I had that realization, like I started dabbling in this space 19 years old. I mentioned I hired my first coach. I started learning about the skills and science of happiness from 19, which I'm so thankful for. Because it meant by the time I was like 23, 24, I was already starting to question, wait, what does happiness mean on my terms, not other people's terms? These days, man, I cannot tell you the amount of people I've coached and mentored who are in their 40s, 50s, and on the outside looking in, they are so remarkably successful. But they've come to me because they've pursued success at the cost of their happiness. Right? They've achieved financial success, career success, but it's led to broken relationships at home. They've had career and financial success, but it's led to detriment in their health. They're not looking after themselves. Or they've achieved, sometimes I heard it described once, like they've put 10, 20, 30 years into climbing the career ladder only to get to the top of the wall and go, I didn't even want to be on top of this building. Like, why am I here? And so they're then having to backtrack. In fact, if I don't know if you have or if your listeners have come across, there's a great book called The Common Regrets of the Dying by an Australian palliative nurse called Bronnie Ware. This is one of the biggest reasons why I hired a coach at 19 years old. This is one of the biggest reasons why I got into personal development so young, was I came across this book. And this Australian palliative nurse, she studied what do people regret at the end of their life. Now, whether they were unfortunately passing away in their teenage years, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, she asked people all different ages, all genders, all backgrounds, all experiences. What do you regret? If you look back on your life, what would you change? Right? One of the most common regrets, there was 5 that she found, and I won't share them all because it's a good book to read. One of the most common ones, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. One of the most common regrets people have is I lived my life by other people's expectations and standards. You know, one of the other most common ones, I wish I'd let myself be happier. People spent their life chasing success rather than prioritizing happiness. I read that, and man, I remember being, I think I was about 18, 19 when I read that book, and I went, I think I'm on path for those to be regrets that I live with. Like, if I keep going down the route I'm going to be someone who says that's what I regret. And I don't want that. I don't want anyone who listens to this conversation to be in that position that you get to the end of your life, whenever it may be. We don't know how long we've got on earth, right? Whenever it may be, I don't want anyone who listens to this conversation to go, I lived a life for other people and I lived a life of success but not happiness. Because from my perspective now, as someone who's dedicated his life to happiness, a life of success at the cost of happiness is one of the most common forms of failure.
That's crazy, man. That conversation just then gave me shivers. It's such a deep reflection point where you can kind of imagine yourself on your own deathbed and imagining regretting that. And it's like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah. But I will say, man, like I'll point out on that because that doesn't mean doing the other path is easy. Like, oh man, like you can go, I don't want to go down that route. I want to make sure I'm prioritizing happiness and I'm living a life that's true to myself. Well, now you've just chosen the hard path in life, right, in some way, because now you've got to figure out, what are my values? What do I stand for? What are my strengths? What is the impact I want to have on other people whilst I'm here? What is a true life that's aligned by my definition of happiness and success? What are the skills that relate to happiness? How do I learn those, right? How do I learn to manage my mind and emotions? How do I learn meditation and mindfulness? How do I learn to journal well? And so I sometimes say to people, I'm like, hey, that is the harder path to choose early, but it leads to a much better life. The alternative is you choose the easier, predictable, safe path early, and it's more likely that you end up at the end of your life looking back with regret. Now, personally, I know I'm glad that the younger me chose. I'm thankful every day that me over 10 years ago now was like, I'm going to pick the hard path because I think it's going to lead to something better. And my God has it.
The hard path. Why is it the hard path?
Yeah, because it's not common, man.
Not common.
Man, I dream of, I'm going to be honest here to you and the listeners. I dream of the day. Let's be real. 2 generations ago, right? Probably your grandparents, my grandparents.
Okay.
2 generations ago, it was unheard of and crazy to say that I go to a gym and I pay a guy to help me work out. No one did that, right? Like, that wasn't a thing. People would be like, what do you mean? You pay to go to a gym and then you pay someone there to teach you how to work out well and move your body and look after your physical health. It just didn't happen. Now it's almost a status symbol, right? People are kind of bragging about it. You know what I mean? They're like, of course I go to the gym and work out. Of course I have a trainer who wrote up this great plan for me. Hell, I saw a dietitian. I've got a good meal plan as well. I look forward to the day, and I think it's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 generations. I think we're starting to see it now. I reckon your generation that's coming up, man, and the one just below you, I reckon you're going to be the generation that leads this, where it becomes so normalized and celebrated to go, of course I'm working with a counselor, psychologist, therapist, or coach. Of course I'm going to a happiness college and learning about my mind and emotions. Why would I not want to learn about how to optimize my brain and my feelings? No, I'm not going to wait till I'm hitting rock bottom to do that. Why would I wait till I'm suffering and struggling and depressed and anxious and overwhelmed? I'm doing that early. Right? Like, that excites me. And when that happens, it's no longer going to be the hard path to prioritize a life of happiness and a life that's true to you. I think it's going to become more common. It's going to become hopefully the standard. I joke with Bill sometimes. I'm like, I hope that by the time I die, whenever that may be, me running a happiness college doesn't even need to exist anymore, because it's so built into the normal education system, because it's so common and standard for people to go, of course I'm going to go learn about my mindset and my emotional intelligence, and about happiness. Why would I not do that? Man, I hope this is my offer and my invitation to your generation and the one below. I hope by the time I'm 60, 70, 80, there's no need for me to have a job anymore. I hope so.
Hopefully you'll be retired. That point you've just said, I feel that a lot. But with that, I think we can both agree on that there's going to need to be some big changes in society. And I want the count of 3, both of us to say what we think it is. 3, 2, 1.
Accessibility.
System.
Ooh, okay, cool.
You said accessibility.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'm going to be being 100% realistic about this. And I'm mindful of this every day. Running a social enterprise, we've been fortunate enough now to work with members and graduates in 5 countries. But the fact of the matter is there is a massive chunk of the global population that does not have the financial resources to go to a college and to pay a professional to work with them to learn the skills and science of happiness. It's that simple, right? And when I look at our mental health care system, I've seen us go through an era for the last 15, 20 years of mental health awareness, which is very important. People are talking about it more, right? It's becoming more normalized to talk about mental health and not just mental ill health like depression and overwhelming anxiety, but mental positive health, right? What does it mean to be mentally well and thriving and flourishing? My challenge is we cannot hope to make the change that we want to make in the world just through awareness alone. Talking about change doesn't make change happen. It creates an opportunity for change. What has to come next is an era of mental health advocacy, action, and accessibility. So my hope is that it's going to become more and more accessible for people to access this support and these skills and tools and resources. And I know I'm challenging our team. We're having conversations about this every 3 months in our quarterly meetings. How do we make what we do more accessible? And I've got a book coming out this year, which I'm sure we can talk about. I've got, we just relaunched our podcast called How to Be Happy, about the skills and science of happiness. We're doing a YouTube channel, TikTok. There's all these channels now that we have to go, hey, we can spread this knowledge and these skills and resources much wider than we used to be able to. And people don't have to pay one-on-one to access it, right? We can make a difference here. And to your point, I hope we see it come into the education system more.
Exactly.
If people are going through high school and part of their education and their curriculum in high school is, hey, let's start talking about what your values might be and what matters to you in life. Let's talk about how to manage stress proactively, right? Let's talk about how to form meaningful and deep and intentional relationships with other people. Those human skills, I think, are going to be needed more than ever, especially as we're coming into this era of AI and machine learning. The thing that's going to separate us and make us stand apart from artificial intelligence is humanity. But our education system currently is not built towards, as I said at the start, it's not built towards how do we make great humans. It's built towards how do we make great employees. Yep. And there's a difference there.
Even that, myself going through finishing school, I felt very empty. Yep. And I talk about this a fair bit on the podcast, that you're left with not knowing what direction to pursue. You got to get that stable job because that's what your parents did, grandparents did, and it's this generation, the Gen Z and Gen A coming through now, that are going to have that tough decision to make, whether they pursue the path we're given or live a life on our own terms, which goes back to your point on having that quietness, that self-reflection period, because you can't make these decisions when you've 20 things demanding your time, which I think that's such a important point.
Yeah. And like to that point, like whatever ends up feeling true to you and right for you, go for it. You know what I mean? Like I'm such a big believer in reminding people, I may be seen as, a quote unquote expert in the science of happiness, but I'm not an expert on you and your life. I never will be. Right? And so I think what's magic is where people tune into themselves, do the introspection. And if you decide that you're like, hey, what feels meaningful and impactful and purposeful to me and aligns with my definition of happiness and success is to go to uni, and it's to study law or medicine or become a teacher or whatever the hell you want, and you want to pursue that stable path, cool. As long as you're doing it with intentionality and you're doing it in a way that aligns to you, man, I'm stoked for you. If you do that soul searching, you go, actually, I want to start a business or a social enterprise or a not-for-profit, or maybe I have no bloody idea what I want yet, and I want to travel for a bit to just figure out who I am outside of, the school system and outside of being at home. Like, who am I for me now that I'm an adult? Whatever it is that feels right to you, whatever it is we spoke about green light before that feels equally scary and exciting, do that. I promise it'll pay off.
Is that what you did? Because you were saying when you were, 18, 19, you got your first mentor. And this was the turning point for you, which has steered you on the path you are on now. For example, someone like myself who is pursuing their passion, but also working a job which may not be fulfilling and be their so-called that equally scary and equally exciting moment. It's not that, but this side passion or hobby is. Would you say go fully in on that, or kind of balance the two until your equally scary and exciting project takes off a bit?
Yeah, man, my perspective on this has changed over the last decade. And the reason being, I actually looked at, I don't remember what the exact study, but I remember looking at a paper a while ago about whether it's more likely that your thing that you're pursuing on the side becomes successful if you go all in on it or not. Because I know so many of the gurus online are like, go all in, quit your job, give everything to it. And there was this big study done that actually found that you're less likely for it to succeed if you do that. Really? Less likely, yeah. And the reason is financial stress and the stress about covering your basic survival needs is a killer of good decisions. Right? The best thing that I did when I started BU Happiness College, for the first 2 years of running BU Happiness College, for the first 1 year, I didn't have a single salary from it. Didn't draw any dollars whatsoever. The only reason I was able to do that was because I was still working at a bar and working as a personal trainer back when I was doing my fitness degree, right? To have enough money to cover my living expenses, to be able to then put intentionality and time into building what would become BU Happiness College without needing to monetize it straight away, without the pressure of having to do that, right? The second year, I was only drawing about $300, $400 a week. I was working nearly full-time hours in it whilst doing the other jobs to get the money in. And that staged, gradual sort of transition, and there is a tipping point where it comes where you go, okay, now I've got to make the leap. But you're doing it in a way that's a lot more intentional. And I will say this too, for those, I'm assuming a lot of people listening are sort of like late teens, early 20s. That's sort of like, correct. Gorgeous. You do not have a better time in your life than right now to experiment and to just try shit. And if it fails, who gives a shit, right? You've got so much time ahead of you to work it out. I mean that. People have asked me recently, would I start BU Happiness College now? Like if I hadn't done it in my 20s, I'm now in my early 30s. I've got a child on the way. I've been married for coming on 10 years next year, so 9 years this year, right? Would I start BU Happiness College now? When I checked in with my own gut instinct and intuition, my genuine answer is no. The reason being, there is a lot more risk for me now, right? I have a mortgage that needs to be paid. I have a wife. I have a child on the way that I need to feed, right? I've gotten used to a certain quality of life. I like to travel each year. You know what I mean? Like, whereas when I was in my early 20s, man, I was like, hell, I'll eat rice and beans all week if I need to, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, man, if I travel, I'm just gonna stay in like the cheapest damn place I could find. I'll pay $5 a night for a bunk bed somewhere in a hostel. Like, and that, I think it's such a ripe opportunity to be like, fuck it, experiment. Like whatever you're interested and curious about. I often say to people, if you want a purposeful life, purpose is the result of passion combined with practice and then perseverance.
Practice
Right.
and perseverance.
So
I love
find
that,
something that you're passionate about, practice the shit out of it, just like get involved in it, get your hands dirty on it, and then persevere with it for a while. Stick with it for 3 to 5 years. Don't do it all in, right? Have another thing that pays your bills, but do it for 3 to 5 years and see what happens. If it still feels super purposeful to you 3 to 5 years later, you're probably on the right track.
That's such an important point because, as you were saying earlier, the media, all these external influences, you were saying they're like, oh, go all in on your passion, your mission, that side business that you've said you're going to do. Just go in, quit your job. But I've never seen that point of view before of, well, what's going to pay your bills? I know it's
you will
on
make
my mind.
worse decisions if you do that. I promise you, you'll make bad decisions for you and for your side hustle and your business or whatever it is that you want to do.
Such a good point. Declan, happiness is a skill.
Yes, sir.
That point, I was like, yeah, right, okay. I'm on my laptop researching what you do, and you say happiness is a skill. How is happiness a skill? Help me understand that.
Man, it was one of the best things I learned early on in my journey of studying the science of happiness is the fact that we can get better at happiness. I think for me, a lot of what I thought of as intrinsic skills or things that are associated with happiness, I'll be honest, for a lot of my life, I thought you're either born with it or you're not, right? You're either pretty confident as a person or you're not a confident person. Maybe you're a bit more shy or insecure. You know, maybe you're pretty good at communication or you're not good at communicating. You're pretty good at managing your emotions or you're not good at managing your emotions. Man, they're all skills. And like any skill, you can learn to get better at it over time. It just means that you're going to suck at it for a bit. And that's something I want to make real clear, right? Like any skill, I don't care whether you're talking learning a language, learning an instrument, or learning how to be happier, which is what I've dedicated my career to. You will go through the same 4 phases. The same 4 things happen when we learn a skill. First phase is unconscious incompetence, aka ignorance is bliss. You don't know what you don't know. And I guarantee, man, there'll be some people listening to this conversation we're having going, I've never thought about any of this stuff, right? Like this is new to me. I didn't know any of this. And so what I'm hoping we're doing in this conversation is kind of like pushing them into stage 2, which is conscious incompetence. I call this the oh shit phase, where you're like, oh shit, this is hard, right? Wow, managing my emotions, that's crazy. Learning what my values are, doing something purposeful and intentional, practicing meditation and journaling, all these things we've spoken about, that's hard. It's tough. Yeah, because it's new. It's like if I pick up a guitar for the first time, I'm not going to sound great. I'm going to sound terrible. If I try to learn Spanish for the first time, it's not going to make sense.
Yeah.
But if you practice long enough, and not only practice long enough, but if you get the right guidance and support, so you get accountability and structure and the right tools given to you, you can then move into phase 3 of learning a skill, which is conscious competence. So I'm getting the hang of this. Like I can do it now. I can play some songs on the guitar. I can speak a little bit of Spanish. I can manage my mind and emotions more effectively, right? But it takes effort still. Eventually, if you practice for long enough, and I love these moments, man. When I see this happen, when we have people come to the college, to be happiness college, we call these a stage 4 moment when it happens. When they do something they've been learning about at the college, be it journaling, meditation, mindfulness, be it knowing their values, be it making intentional decisions, be it building good habits, and they do it without even thinking about it anymore. Like it's second nature. So stage 4 is unconscious competence. It is just so wired into you that it's second nature. I love talking to people now and being like, can you imagine if in your late teens, early 20s, you went, I'm going to put 4 to 5 years into mastering the skills that will make me a happier, more successful human being to the point where they become second nature and I use them for the rest of my life. Like, can you imagine being 25 years old and emotional intelligence is just second nature to you?
Yeah.
Healthy conversation and communication, second nature to you. Resilience and grit in tough times, second nature to you. Right? Those skills, I don't care what job you end up going into. I don't care where you end up living. I don't care who you end up marrying or dating or whatever it may be. No matter what you do in your life, I promise you those skills will last the test of time. So can you imagine going, man, I'm 19, 20, 21. I'm going to spend 4 to 5 years mastering those skills, getting them to stage 4 of unconscious competence. And then you get to ride that wave for the rest of your life.
That's such an important point because even coming out of school, there's so much pressure on you got to develop a real niche skill, become that electrical technician, which you've got to become, you know, and the point you've just said is dedicate a few years on developing that skill, that real self-development. I don't even think it's spoken much in self-development. I've read so many books, and how to be happy isn't a chapter.
Yeah.
But
man, that's why I've written a whole book on it that's covered out.
literally the foundation of everything else on top, which I think is so ironic, but no one's really talking about it, which I think is such an important point. For a young person coming out of school or well into the workforce now, should they really prioritize their, I want to say happiness compared to their stable career, because the stable career may fund the happiness?
Yeah, man, I think it's
how
both.
How do you have that?
I don't think it's one or the other. I think it has to be both. And the reason I say it has to be both, there's a great thing in psychological research called Maslow's hierarchy, which is like, what is the order that we need things in? And a lot of the work I do is in the top two rungs of that, right? Like self-actualization, which is fulfilling our potential, and self-esteem. How do we have a good relationship with ourselves? You cannot do those well and sustainably if your bottom rungs aren't taken care of, which is like, the need for food on the table, a roof over your head. Like, I will promise people it is much harder to learn the skills and science of happiness if you're really stressed about where your next meal is coming from, or really stressed about paying your rent. So I say to people, like, yes, you need to do something in a way and prioritize something that covers your survival needs, but also get really clear on what those are. Because again, I'll echo what I said before. People listening to this, if you're in your late teens, early 20s, you're at the best time of life to take risk because your financial needs are normally relatively low. And I'll say here, financial needs, not financial desires. Right? Because I made that mistake early, man. I was 21 and I signed on, God, I cringe at this still. I was 21 and I signed on for a loan for $35,000 to buy a fancy new ute because I thought that's what everyone else was doing. I'd only been learning about the skills and science of happiness for 2 years. I obviously hadn't learned enough yet, right? And I went, I got to get the new truck, man. Everyone's getting the new truck. It's going to be so good. I'll write it off as a business expense because I was a PT at the time, like a personal trainer at the time. And man, I regret doing it. Like, that money could have gone so much better elsewhere. And that car lost a ton of value. It wasn't worth it for me. So like, get really clear on what is an actual financial necessity. And then from there, invest the rest of time, energy, and money into your own self-development. Again, even if you just do it for 3 to 5 years. If you go, I'm just going to do this for my early 20s, right? I promise you that pays off so much more than anywhere else you could put that.
Such an important point. You hear a lot in society these days that success first, happiness later. And I mean, the school system's kind of like that as well, when the teacher or uni's like, oh, we got this assessment coming up. After the assessment, then you can cool down. Yeah. I want to know, what's your take on that as a happiness coach and the founder of BU Happiness?
Yeah, man. So that relationship between success and happiness, we now know, I can say this with absolute confidence and clarity, we have had that relationship backwards for the last few hundred years. The last few hundred years, we've been teaching success first, happiness second. And we know we teach that because it falls into alignment with what we call the hedonic treadmill or the happiness trap. And you know when you're in it because it says, I'll be happy when. And so whatever the hell you want afterwards, man. I'll be happy when I finish school. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I make more money. Like, we're always chasing it. It doesn't seem to come because we keep raising the bar. Thanks to a guy called Sean Aker. And his team, who were fantastic happiness researchers. They did a series of studies and he wrote something called The Happiness Advantage. It's one of my favorite books. And what he found was that, hang on, the opposite seems to happen. When people learn the skills and science of happiness, when they feel genuinely better in themselves, they think more clearly, they make better decisions, they take braver and bolder action, and they get better results. So hang on, when people learn how to be happier, they're more likely to be successful in a way that's sustainable and long-term. So instead of teaching people, hey, success first, happiness will follow, we need to start teaching the exact opposite. Master the skills and science of happiness first. You are then more likely to make better decisions, think more clearly, take bolder action, get better results. You're more likely to be successful because you prioritized happiness.
What's the first thing that needs to change in that equation for the society to start shifting? Because we were talking about the school system and you said awareness, was it?
I say accessibility. Yeah.
Accessibility.
Yeah.
Do you think those two are the two pillars that need to change for that social norm to start to adapt.
Yeah, I think from top down, yes. So like structurally and systemically, we need to look at our mental health care system. We need to look at the education system. But I also think there's room to do this grassroots and do it bottom up. Man, my hope is let's say, 10% of the people who listen to this conversation today. This will be too ambitious. Let's say 10% go, man, that makes sense. That resonates with me. I get it. Hey, maybe for the next year or two, I'm just going to learn as much as I can about happiness science. And I don't care whether you do that by, reading books, listening to a podcast, watching YouTube, or like whether you're in a position to go, hey, I'm going to be super intentional. I'm going to go do a self-study course or work with a happiness coach, be it with us at BU or anywhere else, right? But if 10% of the people listening to this do that, what that creates is a little bit of a ripple effect in society, right? Because we know there's something called the ripple effect of happiness or the contagion theory of happiness, which is when people learn the skills and science of happiness, not only does their life become better and they become happier, but they unconsciously make a positive impact on those around them, right? It spreads a little bit of a ripple effect where it impacts their loved ones, their partners, their family, their friends, their colleagues. And bit by bit, I think we can all play our part in, our vision at BU Happiness College is to grow global happiness. I cannot change the happiness of the planet directly on my own. I can't do it with the staff that I have at the college. It has to be through the ripple effect. So my invitation to everyone who's listening to this conversation, be part of that ripple effect. Just decide as a result of this that you're like, hey, for the next year or two, I'm going to prioritize learning about the skills and science of happiness. Promise you, you're going to be doing a good thing for yourself and for those around you.
That process that you've just identified there, do you think seeking out mentors is such a vital part for that development? Or do you think reading books and individual research is good enough?
Yeah, I think individual research is a good starting point, but man, working with a coach or a mentor, that is a cheat code. Like, you will just accelerate your growth and development for a couple of reasons, right? Firstly, it gets you out of your own blind spots and out of your own goddamn way. I've been learning this for over a decade. I still have coaching sessions with coaches and mentors because they can point out stuff that I can't see in my own thinking. They can challenge me more directly. They can hold me accountable better than I can hold myself accountable, right? So that goes a hell of a long way. The other thing is you're also, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel by piecing together, because there's so much information out there. Like if you go Google now, happiness, you will get hundreds of millions of results from people all over the world. I think I wrote this in my book that I've got coming out on the skills and science of happiness. I wrote in there because I tested it. I Googled how to be happy. Like, what are people recommending? And it was everything, man, from like exercise to discover your purpose and passions and values to there was even a blog article that said your happiness will boost and your body will create more dopamine and serotonin if you expose your bare bum hole to the sun for at least 10 minutes a day. I kid you not, right? So firstly, I thought, how is that even possible? Like, do I have to lie on my back?
Planes don't fly over you.
Yeah, do I have to like lie on my back with my ass up in the air and my cheeks spread? Like, how are people doing this? But then it also made me realize, I'm like, there's a lot of bullshit out there on the internet about psychology and about happiness and about well-being. Like the self-help industry, man, I love it. I'm in it, but it is a wild west of unregulation. Anyone can say they're a coach and jump on and just write anything. So my worry with that is if you just try to do it yourself, you have to sift through a lot of crap. Whereas if you work with a coach and mentor, someone who's good and has qualifications and background and experience and proof that they're good at what they do, they can help you kind of avoid all the shitstorm and just do the stuff that actually works. So you're more likely to get success out of it quicker. I think you can do it yourself. You're just going to do it way more efficiently and effectively if you do it with someone guiding the way.
Such a good point. And yeah, the value of mentorship is definitely underlooked and not taught in the school system.
Yeah.
Declan, the definition of happiness, you said this in your TED Talk as well. The definition of happiness, the state of being happy.
Yeah.
Cue the champagne bottles. We now know what happiness is.
It's solved.
It's solved. How would you describe happy or define happiness now with obviously all the amazing work and research you've done?
Yeah, man, it's a good point. And look, this is a question I mentioned in my TEDx talk that like we've been debating what happiness is for 3,500 years. Yeah. Right? The ancient Greeks, the Greek philosophers used to have arguments about what does it mean to be happy. And we're still doing it, by the way. Positive psychologists and happiness researchers, we're still debating with each other what is happiness, which I think is a good point in going, maybe there's not a one-size-fits-all answer for 8 billion people on the planet about what a happy life is for them. So all I can give you is, what is my definition for happiness these days? Right? And the definition I've landed on for myself, I find that happiness for me is when I feel deeply aligned to who I am and deeply content with where I am in life currently. So I've got a good relationship with myself. I love the life that I've built. I'm grateful. I'm present. All that stuff we were speaking about earlier. And on top of that, I have something meaningful and impactful that I'm working towards. Right? Both have to come together. I find if I lean too much into just be happy with where I am now, it feels a little bit like something's missing in terms of like achievement, accomplishment, growth. Like those things still matter to me. And I feel a little bit stagnant. If I lean too heavily though into the what am I building towards, I get stuck on that happiness treadmill of I'll be happy when.
Yes.
Oh, life will just be better at this next milestone, right? So for me, it's this fine, not even a balancing point, almost an integration of the two of how do I make sure I'm cultivating happiness here and now in who I am currently and in this current chapter of life. And I've got some upcoming chapters that I'm really looking forward to. Right? When we can do both of those, mate, that's a happy life by my definition.
That's such an amazing point. At what point in your life were you when this came to mind? Because I know I can speak on my behalf that I think I'm more on the side of I'll be happy when. And for example, I just ran the HBF and got this crazy time for a half marathon.
Congrats,
and
man.
I've achieved that. And I'm like, okay, next thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I've worked by 6 months with this goal. I'm not giving it the recognition it needs. And
Yes,
I think I'm having that kind of pivotal moment myself. I want to know, what was your pivotal moment that you got to have a balance between having that mission, having that vision and dream, but also being in the present?
Man, I'd say the biggest, most vivid, because I think that's been an unfolding over many years, but the most vivid and clear moment where that became concreted for me, my 25th birthday. My 25th birthday, I was actually on our first ever international, what we call a happiness expedition, where we take a bunch of our members and clients from BU Happiness College and we go somewhere in the world to do something hard. In this definite, what we're doing on this particular expedition, we went to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. We did it over, I think it was 8 days, maybe 10 days. It's been a while now.
Wow.
Summit night of that night was one of the hardest things I've done in my life. I got severe altitude sickness. I was crying, throwing up, hallucinating. I didn't know where I was. I remember one of the guides, I was like, hey man, I got to sleep. And the guy was like, if you sleep here, you will die. And I remember being like, man, I don't care anymore. Like it was so weird what altitude sickness does to your brain. I became so ambivalent to my life. Now my wife was with me, right? And she was there being like, hey, you got to get up. We got to keep going. We got to get off this mountain. And we got to it's called the first summit on Kilimanjaro. It's a place called Gilman's Point. So it's not the highest point on the mountain, but it's the top of the volcanic crater. And then you go round the crater to the highest point. And we got up there and I went, hey, we've come all this way. We've put in all this work. We've got to touch the summit. We've got to get to the highest point. That's where happiness and success lies. And I remember the guide looking at me, he said, my friend, if you go to that summit, I'm not sure you're coming back. Like you are sick. You are unwell. You don't realize this. You've got to get down. You've got to get to lower altitude. And so I was pushed down the mountain real quick. And I pulled into the tent back at base camp on my own. My wife was somewhere further up the mountain because I tried to walk with her and they went, no, you need to get down fast. Like someone will look after her, but you got to get down. And I pulled into my little 2-man tent on my own at base camp right as the clock ticked over. And I looked and I went, holy shit, it's my 25th birthday. I just turned 25 and somewhere my wife is up there on that mountain. I was just told I was close to death. I also reached a point where I didn't care if I died, which is scary. What am I doing here? And it led to the walk back down the next couple of days of getting off that mountain. I walked in silence most of the way and I was just reflecting. I'm like, why am I even here, man? Like, what am I doing? And I realized that I was 2 years into running BU Happiness College. I was also 2 years into being married. I'd been learning about the skills and science of happiness for quite a few years, but I was still stuck in that ego trap of I'll be happy when I do these big successful things. When the business is making way more money, when I summit the highest mountain in Africa, when this happens. And I went, I've stopped practicing happiness now. And I came back from that trip a changed man. I came back from that trip and I went, you know what? I'm going to lean more into that. How do I cultivate a good relationship with who I am right here, right now? How do I forge and cultivate happiness right here, right now in this chapter? And don't get me wrong, I'm still ambitious, still a high achiever. I still have goals that I aim for, but they no longer define my happiness. I don't have to achieve them to be happy. Right? And I look back on that time now, I look back all these years later going, that mountain changed me as a person. Right? I think in many, I was humbled in many ways, which I needed. And man, you know, you ask, when did I start going happiness now rather than happiness in future? As I said, it's been a long journey of that unfolding, but that particular experience, man, that particular year, that particular moment, that one's definitely still front of mind.
Wow. That story is absolutely amazing. Do you think that individuals need to experience some sort of big, hard thing that they got to do to really be content and have that massive self-reflection stage? Because based on your story, that story is crazy. I don't see myself climbing that mountain almost dying. Do you think we got to really take these massive risks and experience the craziness to be content with ourselves?
I don't think we have to. I'm definitely, for everyone listening to this, like, don't just immediately go put yourself in a near-death situation for the sake of it, right? Like, that's not my message today. Don't do it for the sake of it. However, I think there is value in two things here. Two things that happened as a result of that trip. There is value in doing really tough things. Be it set out to do your marathon, like a half marathon. I did the same. I did a half marathon, a couple of years, full marathon last year. To be like, can I do it? Let's push myself. Let's do something really hard. I think there is value in once or twice, or maybe once a year or once every 2 years, just going, I'm just going to do something bloody hard that tests me and challenges me physically, mentally, emotionally, time-wise. Like, there is value in that. It's incredibly good for our growth. There is also value in something that we call mortality motivation.
Mortality motivation.
Mortality motivation is what happens when we remind ourselves that we are going to die one day. Right? The ancient Stoics used to carry coins with them that said memento mori on it, which was Latin for remember that you will die, which is a pretty blunt reminder, right? You're rummaging through your coin purse and you pull out a little coin that's like, just remember, you're going to die one day, right? I think as a society, particularly, man, my early 20s, I thought I was bloody invincible, dude. Like, some days I still do. Like, I'm not that old, man, but like, I think I'm like, I got nothing but time ahead of me. But for all I know, how many stories do we hear of people who unfortunately pass away, late teens, early 20s? Like, it could happen, exactly. Right? And so I think we're so disconnected from our mortality that we don't ask the questions about how we want to live our life because we think we've got endless time ahead of us. And it comes back to that book I recommended earlier, Bronnie Ware's Common Regrets of the Dying, right? There was something really valuable about I'd read that in my late teens and then find myself at 25 going, holy shit, I was just about to accept death on this mountain.
Jeez.
What's going on, right? Like, what am I doing here? What is the life that I want to live? So I think there is value in challenging yourself. There is value in reminding yourself of your own mortality and being intentional about how you want to live. I think the more we accept the fact that we will die one day, the more it encourages us to be intentional with the life that we have and the time that we have available to us. So do I think that you necessarily need to go and put yourself in a close to death situation? No, let's not do that. Do I think it's valuable to do hard things and to remind yourself that you're going to die one day? So let's be intentional about living. Yes, let's do that.
Declan Edwards, thank you so much. This episode has been a major reflection on the life I have achieved so far and the journey that's yet to come. Thank you so much. I got a couple last questions for you.
Yes, sir.
If you were going to go back to younger Declan, whether that was the Declan getting the mental for the first time or graduating high school Declan, what would you tell yourself and why?
Man, I'd say that it takes time and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. I still, to some days, still have this habit of I massively, I heard it said once, I think it might have been Tony Robbins or someone said, we often overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10.
Yes.
And man, that rings so true for my like teenage years, early 20 years. I remember when I started this business, I was like, man, we're going to do like $1 million in revenue in the first year. We're going to have like 1,000 students come through the college. Like, let's go. And then that didn't happen. Right? I told you I wasn't getting a cent for the first year. Right. But that's okay. Like anything worth doing takes time. And so I think reminding myself like, hey, it's going to take time to master the skills and science of happiness. It's going to take time to figure out who you are. It's going to take time to live a life that feels aligned to you. Stick with it.
Amen. I love that. Declan, the last guest I interviewed on the podcast left a question for you, not knowing who you are, what business you do, or what your mission is. The question is, what show or movie, deep down, would you say had a huge influence on who you are today and that has forever changed you?
Oh, man. A show or movie. I've kind of got two in mind. I'm actually forgetting the name of the second one, so I might describe it and maybe one of the listeners can write in and help me remember what it's called, or you can Google it and find it. First one, The Bucket List. You know, the movie with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson, I believe it was, of just people going, exactly that, right? So sometimes people find it weird that someone who's dedicated his life and career to studying happiness talks so much about mortality and death, but I think they are related, right? And so this show of these people being like, I'm going to die, what do I want to do with the time that I have, I think was inspiring. I watched that around the time that I read Bronnie Ware's book, so I think it was just the right movie for the right time. The other one is a Will Smith movie. It's not The Pursuit of Happiness. Everyone I say, hey, there's this Will Smith movie that still stands out to me. I cried in it. I remember just being so positively touched and impacted by it. And everyone's like, oh, it's The Pursuit of Happiness because you say happiness. I'm like, no, not that one. There's one where Will Smith, he loses his son in it and he meets the character's time and death. And he like, it forces him to reflect on his life and try to go through a difficult chapter, obviously losing a child, but be more intentional about living. And that, man, there's a One Republic song in there that like the band One Republic that every time I hear it still just transports me back to being in that cinema watching that movie. I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm blanking on it.
Is the movie Collateral Beauty?
Collateral Beauty. Yes,
Collateral Beauty.
man. Thank you. That was going to bug me all day. Yeah, Collateral Beauty. That movie, it's such an underrated gem, such an overlooked one of Will Smith's pieces, but to just be like, yeah, even in difficult and tough times in life, there is still beauty. And for me, as someone who studies happiness, even in my most stressful, challenging, overwhelming moments, there have been times of happiness. We just need to find it.
Declan, what question do you want to leave for the next guest, not knowing what business they're in, what their mission is, or what they stand for?
Man, I would love to ask them. I've been on a little side quest, I call it, for the last 6 years now, where I've been asking people all around the world the same question. I've been documenting their answers.
Wow.
I've asked people now in every single continent except for Antarctica this question. So I've traveled around the world asking people of all ages, all backgrounds, all genders. I say to them, hey, by your definition, what is happiness? Describe happiness to me, right? And it's been really beautiful seeing the differences in answers, the similarities in answers. So, man, I would love for you to pay that forward and ask your next guest, by your definition, what is happiness?
Declan Edwards, I certainly will. And thank you so much for this conversation. It means the absolute world to me. I really look forward for being a part of your journey in BU Happiness College and look forward to seeing where it takes you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Declan Edwards, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise over happiness and how to live a more fulfilling life with intention. Thank you. 30 seconds of your time. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. If you enjoyed this episode or just got one thing from it, let's spread the ripple effect of happiness. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And in return, I'll do my absolute best to keep improving this podcast every single day, and I will not stop. Until next time, keep growing, and I look forward to seeing you on this next episode.